Do the Pacers have enough of a youth pipeline built up, and what can they do or should they do about it heading into next season? Plus, looking ahead at veterans down the stretch and so much more coming on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Congrats, you made it through the weekend. Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and Circle City Spin. And today, hello from my hotel room in LA once again. Sorry for the bed in the background. I hate that, but I don't really have another option. We have a lot to get to today. I want to go deeper on something I talked about yesterday after Pacers Clippers, after Cam Jones got a DNP, his contract for next season. Makes me want to really lead into next season's guard rotation and the Pacers youth pipeline. Do they have enough there? Obviously, their lottery pick will be a consideration, but a deep dive into what they should consider. With that, a couple things to get into for vets down the stretch, since I previewed a lot of other guys, coming seasons, and of course, the two-way guys. They haven't gotten any buzz recently as well on what's important for them down the stretch. We can really finish previewing the final quarter of the season during this week, but I want to start where I kind of ended yesterday. I talked about this a little bit, and that's kind of this Cam Jones situation. It's not even a situation. It's just a thing that is reality for the Pacers, and he had this back injury early in the season, and so he missed the first 20 whatever games, and the Pacers have played 62, and he's appeared in 24 of those games, and he did not play against the Clippers last night. Quentin Jackson did play. They played 11 guys. Quentin Jackson was back in California, the closest, NBA arena to where he grew up, and he just got a standard deal, so maybe that was a factor, but that puts Cam Jones at 38 games missed. The way his contract is set up, it's fully guaranteed this year, and then next season, granted at a small number, it is currently half guaranteed, but it becomes fully guaranteed if he plays in 41 games this season, meaning he'd have to appear now in 17 of the Pacers' final 20 games, and that's not like something that I'm making a goal or not a goal as the Pacers. I would like to play him because I want to see if he's any good if I'm the decision makers for the Pacers, not because of his contract for next year, but it's not fully guaranteed. Quentin Jackson's only very small partial guarantee is a thing as well. And this got me really thinking about how the Pacers should be considering these kind of overlapping factors, because it would be very easy to say, and I have said this, like, what if Quentin Jackson's in the rotation? Like, do they need Cam Jones? Would he even play on the team? What's his future with the group? And it's not, you don't want to give up on a 30th pick after 1 year, but this got me thinking about two kind of conflicting things when it comes to Cam Jones and the Pacers, because they have been and are still a younger good team, but for a long time they were talked about as a young team, and that's not really the case anymore. Like, basically the whole roster that everybody has known as a young team or a younger player enters next season at 25 or older, right? Haliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Toppin, Huff, these are all like younger veterans, and all those guys could still in theory get better, kind of TBD on Haliburton's growth status now. Ben Shepherd turns 25 over the summer, right? They're not, to be clear, they're still on the younger side of a good team, but they're getting older, right? They don't have as many guys that you point to as like, that guy has a ton of potential to grow. They have some, and we'll get to those in a second, but they're evolving out of that. And to be clear, that on its own, what I just said, is not a bad thing. It's not like becoming an older team is bad. Older teams are typically better, and the Pacers want to be better next year. They want to be good right away and hit the ground running, right? So that's fine. That alone is not a problem. But you do, as an organization, want to have some, I've always thought this at least, and I think the Pacers have strategically made sure this is the case in some ways. You want to, both because of cheap contracts and because of like guys growing into becoming important players, have a youth pipeline building up of guys who are like maybes, and then whoever hits of that group becomes a rotation player. People might forget, 2.5 seasons ago, Aaron Nesmith was not considered a given in the Pacers rotation heading into the year, and then he grew into somebody that had to play, right? Jarris Walker has grown into somebody that probably has to play at some points next season. Like, you want to have all these kind of things on your team. You never know who's going to pop. Right now, next season, again, put aside the draft pick. I'm aware that's consideration. I'll get to that later in the segment. The current youth of the sub-25, like this could grow into a real player thing for the Pacers, would be Cam Jones, obviously, he'll be 24. Taylor Peters, a maybe. He'll be 24. Jarris Walker will be 23. And Johnny Furphy will, this is the start of next season, he'll turn 22 like very early in next season. He'll be 21 when it starts, right? So that's fine. Jarris Walker's obviously like pretty good already. He's a rotation quality player. The rest of the guys, those guys are question marks for if he just tore his ACL, right? Is that really enough of a youth pipeline? Like, is there really enough there to go one of these guys, and maybe Walker is emerged out of this group already because he's already kind of proven himself, but who do they think of that group is going to emerge into somebody who could play when someone else on the team ages out, signs a contract somewhere else, something of that nature where you need somebody else coming up? So it's not a bad thing necessarily that there might be like Quentin Jackson is playing instead of Cam Jones next season, but that would mean the Pacers like youth pipeline of guys who could eventually step into real roles and have meaningful considerations for the Pacers next season is pretty limited. And none of those guys, Jarris will be in his fourth year, but he's the only one that's like an ex-first round pick that's like thought of as a high ceiling. Not to say that Furphy isn't good and hasn't been good, or Jones can't be more, or Taylor Peter can't be more, but that's just a lot of unproven. That's about the smallest youth pipeline they've had entering a season. Like even this season going on right now, Mathurin and Jackson were on the team entering the season. Whatever you think of, Ray J. Dennis was technically on the team to start the year, right? You can go back in past years and find other guys who have either evolved out of this group or been traded or whatever along the way. Jordan Nwora, Jalen Smith. I mean, you could go on and on. And so it's not a bad thing that those players have been replaced with better players. That's why the Pacers are good. But there is the right balance to strike. And so they have unprovens like Ethan Thompson, like Micah Potter, that 27-year-old Ethan Thompson to start next season, 28-year-old Micah Potter, 28-year-old Quentin Jackson, 27-year-old Jalen Slauson. I'll talk about some of those guys later. But I keep talking about other guys to say they don't have a lot of youth. And a lot of the youth they do have, maybe besides Jarris Walker, is kind of just like big shrugs, question marks. Are they actually going to ever contribute? I'd say Furphy had a good chance to be heard from in that way until tearing his ACL. And so I say all that, 6 minutes of whatever to say that is the case for Cam Jones, regardless of his contract being guaranteed next year, having a spot on the team, is that they need guys that, even he's 24, so young is maybe not the perfect word, but lesser experience, have room to grow, whatever you want to call it. They need guys like that on the team, both because of, cheap contributors and because they can grow into something more. And Jones does have good flashes this year, the double-double. His defense at times has been at least certainly intriguing. To me, he can get places, but he certainly has limitations, efficiency-wise, a lot to work on. I don't think there's any sort of chance he's in the rotation next year. Could he ever be? Who knows? But that is why keeping Jones would be reasonable, even if they don't guarantee his contract, or even if his contract doesn't become guaranteed for next season. Now, obviously, elephant in the room, hey, if they get a top 4 pick, their youth pipeline looks a lot better if it's, I'm picking just one of these guys just for sake of argument. Pick one of the 4. If it's Cam Boozer, Jarris Walker, or Johnny Furphy, you're like, sweet. That's 3 guys that seem like they could be good, even without Jones or Peter or whatever, like more flyery type guys, right? So that's obviously very important. But how do the Pacers add to their youth pipeline? Is it an undrafted free agent 2-way because they don't have their second round pick? Is Furphy enough? Are they really excited about that? These are all questions that I would have if I'm them, if I don't get a top 4 pick. But here's the other factors to consider, right? Of course, I typed down here, some of you were shouting about the top 4 pick. I already got to that. The other part of this is because Jones' deal for next year is already half guaranteed, right? It's $1.075 million out of the $2.15 million. Basically, if you waive Cam Jones as the Pacers for whatever reason, savings, a roster spot, you want to sign somebody else, whatever, that's not that much savings. And what is a better use of, just over $1 million than a guy that you picked and have developed for a year? And no, he's not like awful, right? That sounded harsher than I intended for it too, but somebody that you believe can be something. Now, obviously, they could stretch it out, and then you really make a lot of savings. They could also stretch out Quentin Jackson's contract if they had to. I'm not even suggesting that fate for either player. There are ways to get more savings out of those guys, but all I'm saying is I don't think there's enough savings from Jones that he wouldn't be on the team. But I don't think it's even though his contract is not guaranteed next year, I think it's more likely than not, given their current youth pipeline and outlook, that he would stick around. It's going to be hard for them to, if they don't get a top 4 pick, to like get a second rounder and give him a standard deal for cheap reasons, because then they'd go in with Jones and Furphy in that player. And that's just 3 like hard to deploy roster spots. I think they'd need a real player. So I don't see Jones having any sort of like route to playing real minutes next season. But I do think, given their youth pipeline situation and their savings, unless they're just like totally slammed by the tax and they think Quentin Jackson's going to play way more than him, I don't think that they would not have Jones on the team next year. I just really wanted to dive into all of the kind of circulating factors around his contract guarantee as he gets closer to the situation where it may not be guaranteed heading in to next season, but he also would have like a summer league to prove himself, potentially a training camp, all sorts of those things. But that was a topic I brought up and kind of brushed over. I got a couple questions about it that I wanted to explore in more details. And they also want to explore in more detail, do any veterans need to show something for the Pacers in these final 20 games? I've previewed a lot of other guys. Let's talk some vets coming up here on Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, we got to talk about FanDuel. College basketball is nonstop. There's a women's SEC tournament game on the TV right above my computer. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts. There's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins. With a college basketball parlay profit boost, you can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your read. You can mix spreads, totals, player props. See how you see the slate plan out, match it to what you do, and then apply profit boost. Instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold. Ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style. Now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day, or second listen. Locked On Spurs. The game's not over yet, but the Spurs are whooping the Detroit Pistons right now. And, man, do the Spurs look good when they look good. Locked On Spurs postcast. We'll have something for you there. And, of course, Kuka Hill will talk about the Pistons side of that game on Locked On Pistons. And, hey, check out the Everydayer Club. There's one for every single Locked On podcast, including Locked On Pacers. You can get Locked On Pacers ad-free with the Everydayer Club. Plus, members-only Discord access you can join at the URL that I'll put in the description of this episode. Let's keep rolling here with Dustin Opierak. Earlier this week, we talked about the kind of final stretch of the season for some guys who are fighting for minutes or roles next year. Quentin Jackson, Jarris Walker, Ben Shepherd, Sean Trader. And I on Monday, we talked about guys who might be fighting for a spot on the team, period. Next year, we kind of talked about Cam Jones there, although I think he's probably safe. We talked for like 2 seconds about Jackson, but a lot of focus there on Micah Potter and Kobe Brown. So I've kind of previewed the stretch run for the guys of the most consequence, I would say, in these last 20 games. And to me personally, I would say that I have nothing else to see this season from Andrew Nembhard or Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam was an all-star. He's an amazing player. He projects to be a very key part of what the Pacers do next year. Andrew Nembhard was so good in January that I believe that he got better, that he'll be better next year, even as a two-guard next to Haliburton, which is important. They might need his playmaking in that role if Haliburton isn't quite as good, right? I have belief in those two that they have shown me enough this season in terms of maybe some new stuff or some new roles, and they're both very good. And Aaron Nesmith's kind of here. I'll get to him in a second. But what I do want to talk about is there is this veteran crop of players who obviously has proven themselves to everyone. The Pacers just made the finals last year with a lot of these players in tow, but a big part of this season and the Pacers' hopes for this season and what happened when they went 9-9 in 18 games a couple weeks ago was that those vets would be able to do a little more or take on a little more responsibility, and the team would be about a 500 team. And some of that hasn't happened. And so I wanted to explore in these final 20 games, is there any sort of grading rubric that I will be looking at when it comes to some of these veterans? Is there a way for the Pacers to walk out of the season going, I feel way better about this player, that player, whatever, because of what they did in March onward, right? And that has happened with players in the past, right? Certainly guys have bumped up their stock with a strong close to the season or things of that nature. So, for example, right, 2 seconds of good play would be nice from everybody in general, but TJ McConnell, right? His season has certainly showed signs of like less ability to get all the way to the cup, some of those craftier finishes, even though he's played with a massively different second unit than what he's used to. But I have 2 things listed that I would like to see just a few times from him down the stretch. In a few games, can he just have like some heck yeah level shot creation? He's done that a couple times this season, but just a few more of like, he scored 12 points on 5 of 6 shooting and got to whatever shot he wanted and penetrated the lane over and over. That's a very valuable thing for the Pacers, especially going into a season where there's all these questions about who's going to create shots for the second unit, who's going to be a primary ball handler for those bench groups, right? It's going to be valuable to see him do that a couple more times. His birthday is this month. He'll turn 34, right? How many more years does he have of that ability level? If he shows a few more of those games, I think that'd be a meaningful thing for him to do in the final 20, especially after he had injuries early in this season. And then the other thing for me is, I think their skill sets are very natural in a way that this isn't like some complicated thing that they need to figure out, but just more time with both Huff and McConnell on the floor together. even if it's not like them discovering some secret tactic that they can use to generate shots, if they just play in a way that, they look better together heading into next year, I would consider that a successful close to the season from TJ McConnell. Jay Huff, too, he started a lot of the season. He's played with so many guys. His role changed a ton when Isaiah Jackson started this game, and then Tony Bradley started. Now Huff was at the 4 for a couple games, and James Wiseman's playing. He played a lot of different roles and styles and all that thing. I'm not saying he is lacking chemistry with anybody, but specifically with Obi, we'll talk about in a second. Some reps with him, some reps with McConnell, some reps with Jarris, guys who it looks like he could be playing with the second unit, but this is kind of a cop-out. My J Huff thing I'm watching for, can he play all 82? That'd be kind of cool for a guy that he's the only Pacer who has yet to miss a game this season, and would be cool for, like I was about to say before I had to get back to saying that he'd played all 62, a guy that entered the season with whatever it was, 89, 90 NBA games. I can't do math, even less than that, 85 NBA games, to then play 82 in one season, right? That's pretty cool. That'd be a really cool thing, a sign of his kind of career growth to this point, and finding a team that, even if just is whatever it's going to be next year, 15 minutes a game backup center, found a spot where he could be that after the career he had fighting through 2As, would be meaningful, I think, for him, and he's 20 games away, so I am hopeful that can be something that is tracked and enjoyed by all of us down the stretch of this season, but not any actual specific basketball thing besides maybe a couple more pretty warm shooting games. 3 more guys, veterans that I would like to see at least something from down the stretch. Aaron Nesmith is really proven to me he's going to be good for this team next year. He's 2 inches short of being exactly who you'd want to see at the 3 spot between Tyrese Haliburton and Pascal Siakam. I've said that exact line a million times. He's still very good. He makes a bunch of threes. He's a great defender. Can he just have 2 awesome games? 2 more really okay, Aaron Nesmith looks great kind of games, because he really struggled out of the gate this season from 3. He's at 36% for the season. His volume's way up. He's taking way harder shots, but his 2-point percentage is shocking. It is 40.6%. He has never, ever been below 49.6%. Basically, his whole career has been 50% or much better from 2. And I get that the shots he's actually taking inside the arc are much harder, much, much harder. He's asked to actually create them for himself instead of cutting or them being created for him or things like that. He's currently shooting 40% at the rim. 48% at the rim, 42% on mid-rangers that he's made, on low volume, but during his career. I know he's capable of this, and if you want to say he's a Haliburton merchant, which I hear all the time, and I think, 1, is stupid, because guess what? Good news, Tyrese Haliburton's his teammate, but 2, he was much better at a lot of these things with the Boston Celtics when Tyrese Haliburton wasn't his teammate. Whatever, I still want to see him do it a few more times. He's just had I'm not saying I expected him to come out and have 20-point nights all the time, but he's been missing a few just really awesome, punchy, holy cow, Aaron Nesmith was balling games. He scored 20-plus points 4 times this season, including that career high night he had against Golden State. A couple, 2 more of those, just to be okay, that's good. He showed a little bit of improvement and growth in the I'm Aaron Nesmith, I have to dribble, I'm creating something, bail out of the shot clock kind of stuff. That would be nice for next season. Obi Toppin, nothing really to see in terms of skill growth. He's not going to be playing enough for that to really be a thing. To me, it's a lot of chemistry things, right? With Jay Huff, with Ivica Zubac, and that's key of anybody. We'll get to him in a second. Just a game or two where Obi Toppin plays both halves. Everybody feels good about his health going into next year. And I feel good about this now because of something I saw a couple of games ago that I want to talk about. But to say it, his thing is athleticism and movement. He's this gazelle that can jump 1,000,000 feet in the air. Now, okay, show a few plays that pops. And I think he's done that with the blocks and the rebounds already. And I think I mentioned this. The game after his return, his second game, I believe that would have been the Memphis game. During warmups, TJ McConnell spiked a lob to him from 40 feet away, and Obi ran up and got it and had this flying dunk, his head above the rim, right in front of me. I wish I filmed it, but I didn't. And that just made me be okay, his athleticism is going to still be there. I would just like to see it applied in games a few times, and then great, Obi Toppin's going to be the same guy next year. Great news, he fits the system very well. And then obviously the maybe most key vet of actually showing stuff that matters is Zubac. And it's not even critical that they play him a lot the rest of the season. In fact, a couple games is probably enough. But any chemistry he shows is of value. As we've seen, it takes some, I mentioned this a million times, so if you listen every day, you've heard this. It takes a minute to learn the Pacer system generally, but especially for centers, especially for centers who have not been asked with a lot of spacing or creation tasks. in their career. And Zubac's kind of has some creation stuff the last couple years, but not really his whole career and very little spacing. So he'll just have to learn how he fits, what he's going to need to do, things of that nature. And I guarantee his first game, he takes no threes and takes 3 shots and has 2 points. And everybody's like, why did they trade for this guy? Because it's going to be different for him, but that's why he's going to have to play some this year. So literally anything he shows, I think, will be of some significance. But I look forward to seeing what it is, who he pairs well with, and that perhaps applies to Siakam and Nembhard, just specifically seeing them with Zubac. So I think all the guys I mentioned in this segment have proven enough that their last 20 games is the least relevant. In fact, I'd be fine if everybody said their stats up to the All-Star break, that's their season. Everything else, the lineups are too weird, the health's too weird, the incentives are too weird. It doesn't matter. That's fine. But I do want to see some of this stuff just generally too. If I'm the Pacers, I'm like, great, okay, that's how I feel going into next season. And the last guys to kind of preview their final 20 games is the two-way guys. Jalen Slauson, Taylor Peter, Ethan Thompson. Do they have a route to being on the team next year, to being the next Quentin Jackson or Edmund Sumner or whatever? What else is critical for them down the stretch? We'll get to that coming up to close out today's Locked On Pacers. But first, everybody, we got to talk about 2 great groups of people. First up, 5-Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. They have 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There is something for everyone. The board is set. The flavors are ready. I've had my number 1 pick for the flavor draft. Every single time I've done this, I've chalked about cherry. I'm very excited to try the cherry, but I'll talk about a new one today just to get you guys hip with all the rest. Peach Mango, also a typical flavor combo I would like. Ripe peach flavor. On the first sip, that adds a tropical depth and sweetness, but smooth, rounded fruit profile, slightly richer mouthfeel than citrus flavors, sweet aromatic finish, balanced tropical blend. Sounds delicious, and exactly what 5-Hour Energy can provide for you. Sweet flavors, and they give you a boost with 0 sugar. A lot of upcoming flavor innovations planned to get you that boost you need to get through the day. Find your new flavor of 5-Hour Energy shots available at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. Let's also very quickly talk about Indeed. Workplace chaos. Deadlines are stacking up. Your inbox is overflowing to one position you have to fill. It's still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, that's a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. They help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for with the skills, experience, and location required. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. Here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I'm going to talk to you about Indeed, companies like yours will make 27 hires on Indeed, according to their data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Less stress, less time, more results. We need the right person to cut through the chaos. That's where Indeed sponsored jobs comes in. And listeners of this podcast will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support this podcast by saying you heard about it on Locked On Pacers. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And we are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making this your first listen. Today and every single day, Magic Mavs wrapped up right before I started recording. Cooper Flagg was awesome in his return, but the Magic blew it. The Mavericks blew it. Nice win for the Magic. They need any win they can get. They've had a very weird season. Philip Rossman-Reich will have more on Locked On Magic. The Pacers would have liked to see the Mavs win that game. And the Jazz won. They beat the Wizards in a game that the Pacers care about just in that someone had to win and distance themselves in the standings. Trae Young is playing. We'll see how many games he actually plays for the Wizards. That is also, of course, of note for the Pacers the rest of the way. And that is something that I would like to announce that is coming on this podcast starting next week. I usually do it at the start of March, and this week should have been the start of March, but I was recording in February and I just forgot. Standings Watch. Every year I do it in the final month to look at what the Pacers' goals are and the teams around them and what matters. Last year, it was the playoffs and the tiebreakers and the standings and things like that. This year, it's obviously the inverse standings. We'll look at all the inverse standings teams, their schedule for the week, the key games, stuff like that to keep you informed on how the Pacers spot in the race to the bottom potentially is going. The Jazz win means the Pacers are 4 wins cushion to stay in the bottom 4, where basically they'll have a coin flip. They have a 4% better chance if they remain in the bottom 3. Specifically, Wizards, they to be clear, would have preferred the Wizards to beat the Jazz, but more cushion to stay in the bottom 4 is not a bad thing. One of those teams winning it all is fine. So that'll be coming next week. Okay, I've talked about not this segment too much. The last guys to kind of look ahead to the final stretch I want to get to are the two-way guys and previewing their kind of end of the year. I wrote a story about this, and I've explained this a little bit, but one challenge for these players is none of them can play every game and get rhythm and get time on the floor, right? All 3 of them were inactive, for example, against the Clippers last night, even though they were all with the team in LA. But Jalen Slauson and Taylor Peter can play 13 times the rest of the season, and Ethan Thompson can play 10. So that is obviously of major consideration, is like, can they play in the basketball games? And they can't. The Pacers have 20 games left. If they get to a point where all those guys have 10 games left available, and there's 15 games left, so 5 games from now they can use 6 players to get there, then they could play 2 every night the rest of the way. And it's hard to evaluate all the veterans and all the other guys I've talked about when they're playing with two-way guys. It's just different, but I still think they should try to look at these guys. But figuring out their availability schedule is going to be challenging. Regardless, can these guys show anything that actually matters? Because importantly, but also not importantly, Taylor Peter and Ethan Thompson, I've said this a lot, some people forget, both are under contract for next season. Taylor Peter signed a rare 2-year two-way in the offseason. That usually happens mid-season, like with Ethan Thompson, for example. And both those guys got it. So odds are they'll be around for at least Summer League next year and trying to prove that they belong on the Pacers once again on a two-way or something else. Now, here's why it's less important, is two-ways can just be easily waived at any time for no cap penalty, and they're not guaranteed until the same deadline as every other player. So it's not like they're very fungible. They're easy to move, right? Ray J. Dennis, mid-season, you need to let him go. Easy peasy to do, right? Edmund Sumner gets converted on his 2-year two-way. Tristan Newton, you need to let him go, no problem. Like, it's not hard to move two ways around. They're like a very soft commitment, but it does get you a little farther, though these guys will probably be in Summer League. Regardless, is there anything these guys can actually show? I don't know if I said this on this podcast, by the way, because usually when the Pacers have signed two-way deals late in the year, it's 2-year. Quentin Jackson was not. Jalen Slauson is also not. He's a 1-year, two-way contract, right? So these are very movable deals. They're very cheap before they come guaranteed. And when they do get guaranteed, they're even cheaper. Whatever. I'm rambling too much. Is there anything these guys can really show? Right? Because I want to start with Ethan Thompson because he's 27 at the start of next season, which is like older than the typical two-way, which is rich to say because the Pacers just converted the contract of a 27-year-old two-way guy who's actually pretty good. And that's why Thompson is the lead. He played well at times for the Pacers. Like in early December through like mid-January, he was active every night. And like they actually kind of relied on him. And they didn't play well in that stretch of time. And I way too often put in my notes like, yeah, Ethan Thompson is doing enough things, I guess, to be playing, but no one ever guards him at all. And his G League numbers are insane, and his NBA numbers and his efficiency are not. So when Ethan Thompson plays down the stretch, I've seen so much scoring for him in the G League that if he can put together 5 to 10 of his final 10 games where it's like 14 points on 5 for 10 shooting or something, I think I'd feel good that he deserves at least another shot on a two-way to prove that he can also emerge to be like a 15th guy level scorer because he has had very high peaks and has also kind of chipped in as a defender, a ball handler in transition, things of that nature. But the shots haven't gone in enough, right? So he is the highest current floor of these guys, but you always wonder what that can lead to when he's already 27. Taylor Peter, of course, right, has kind of had this weird basketball journey where he goes from like D1 back to D2 and then up to D1, but he's coming off the bench, but his stats are insane, and then his summer league was awesome, but his season has been, wow, preseason, really interesting. And then he had these 2 awesome games right around the All-Star break, and has not really been heard from a ton outside of that. Can he just be heard from? Can Taylor Peter have a couple more games where some point guard skills are shown, threes go in, the athleticism that he showed at Liberty kind of returns in some sort of form? It's not that it went away, it just hasn't really shown up in the NBA very often. I think that would be a good, okay, Taylor Peter deserves a second year, especially if I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the youth pipeline. Okay, a guy they drafted, they already have under contract for another year on a two-way. Great. Give it another try if they believe he can help, because he hasn't been bad, certainly, but he, hasn't popped significantly. And he was pretty good in the preseason, of course, but that is naturally the preseason. And then Jalen Slauson is a massive question mark because he has not played in the NBA since 2023-24. So, almost 2 years without an NBA game for him. I want to see what his G League improvement looks like in the NBA, because he actually credits a lot of his G League growth and his statistical improvement to the system that the Pacers play, right? His scoring is up and his efficiency is up, and that's rare that both numbers go up. You get more chances. Usually your efficiency goes down. He has not had that problem, but also his passing numbers are pretty good. His rebounding looks great. He's just playing really well. Can that at all translate to the NBA? In the preseason, it was just whatever. He was fine. So what is that going to look like? Does he show anything that makes the Pacers think, oh, yeah, let's try him again on a two-way. Let's see if he can be something for us next year, because he has been that good for the Boom. He was, once Kyle Guy left, he has been their best non-affiliated player to this point of the season. So what does he have? He hasn't played at all. I mean, that's kind of very obvious and generic, but what can he show in this particular system? This system has been great for some guys and bad for others. If he looks good, that makes him potentially worth exploring next season. And that is the final look ahead to the last quarter, 20 games, whatever you want to call it, of the season. The Pacers play LeBron and Luka and the Lakers tonight. We'll see what the status of the Lakers are, because I think they're on a back-to-back. They play the Nuggets later today, but in Staples, and we'll see if they can get a win. And we'll break it all down right here on Locked On Pacers after the game, perhaps from the arena. I should have done it from the Intuit Dome, but I forgot I had Locked On NBA last night. Sorry about that, but thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to these hotel room podcasts. You can find me on social media at Tony Tyrese. This podcast is on many platforms at Locked On Pacers. Back tomorrow talking Pacers Lakers. Till then, everybody have a wonderful day.